Welcome to Spoilers Intended, a podcast about series, novels, and films. For this episode, A24 gave us something not so rare, and yet another lecture on proper child care. But the gags they did not spare, so hold on to your chair. That's right, we're talking everything, everywhere, all at once. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. I'm Stephen Ford, joined as always by Andrew Knuckles.
Hello.
And Joel Killingsworth.
Hello.
So, as we already mentioned, we are doing a small, little, almost unknown film that some people may or may not have heard of. I'm actually not being sarcastic when I say, usually I'm being sarcastic when I say things like that.
I don't know. I mean, this is probably one of the more widely known A24 films.
No, I would disagree. Midsommar is way more well-known.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
This film's opening night was in 10 theaters.
Okay.
It's small. Anyways, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. If you haven't heard of it, you're going to hear a little bit about it. But before we jump into that discussion, we're going to give away maybe a little bit of what the story's about, because we're going to talk about other multiverse stories.
Yeah.
So these are any kind of stories that are told that involve parallel worlds. If your doppelganger jumps out of a portal with a mustache and a goatee because he's evil, that qualifies. So guys, what do we got? I'm going to give it to Joel first.
Sure.
All right. Well, I'm bringing Jet Li's The One.
And I hate him for it because it was going to be mine.
And I was going to mention it too, but here we are.
All right. So The One, in this film, you have the idea that there's a bunch of parallel worlds, a bunch of parallel yous out there, and there's like a collective energy between all of the yous. And the more of the yous,
is it the shape of the U, or is it U-Y-O-U?
the singular person that is
the individual.
The individual. Youths. But basically, the fewer of the youths that there are left,
not youths, youths
in the multiverse, the more of that pool of energy that each remaining one has. And so the idea is that if you could become the only one of you left in the entire multiverse, you would essentially become immortal.
You would have all of this power.
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
You would be the strongest you.
And so the conflict comes in where one of the Jet Lis, who we will deem evil Jet Li, gets in steals a machine that allows him to jump into other parallel worlds.
Right.
And so he starts going on a murder spree, killing every single other one of him that he can find. He just goes to a world, kills him, goes to another world, kills him again. Mm-hmm. And until he comes down to, it's just evil Jet Li versus our protagonist, good Jet Li. And both of them have been getting stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger over the course of the first act. And now they must fight.
Right. With good Jet Li not totally understanding why he's getting stronger.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where when you think about it, it's funny. Of like, you're just a normal guy and you're just like, wow, I can like lift a building now.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
I keep getting older, but I keep feeling better. That is not how age works, let me tell you.
And like, I want to say that there are other subplot elements that are woven into this film, but they don't matter.
No,
like I already
irrelevant.
told you everything that matters.
Yes.
It's a good film.
It is actually quite a good film. And I really liked they did basically Jet Li was doing two different martial arts styles because they don't put a goatee on him so you can know who's evil. It's just the evil one's martial arts, so I don't know the styles at play, is very, very direct. It's very aggressive. It's very violent. Whereas good Jet Li is a much more of a circular motions where it's more of redirecting energy.
So it's Fire Nation versus Water Nation.
Yes, it is very much so. Yeah. It may actually even end up being that those were the same martial arts used for it. The little tidbit I know, there's a scene where he punches a bunch of police officers and they filmed it by hanging tennis balls from the ceiling, and he would punch each tennis ball and they would superimpose. And this was right around the time that digital was kind of creeping into film, but like you were still recording things on film.
Yeah.
And they actually had to go back and reshoot that scene because
he was too fast.
He was too fast. Yeah. The film running at 24 frames a second just didn't get enough of Jet Li for normal people to be like, oh, he punched something there, because he was just going from place to place so fast.
Yeah.
So him,
terrifying.
Him and Donnie Yen
Yes.
are just super fast martial artists.
Mhm.
Like it is, if you've never seen any of the Ip Man films,
You should.
One, you should, but
Yeah.
then two, just some of the martial arts that Donnie Yen does in there are just so like blazing fast.
Mhm.
It's kind of unreal watching it, and Jet Li is very similar to that.
Yeah, no. So a slightly different era of
Yeah.
martial artists on film, I guess.
Mhm.
But yes, definitely. Andrew, you want to take next?
Okay, sure. So
Not the film next, just next go.
So this is kind of this is like the Charlie Day, crazy guy, like looking at the board trying to explain
Okay.
kind of stuff happening. So I chose Fate Stay Night, and I'm just going to go with Unlimited Blade Works because that's probably the most accessible for people to watch. But there is a massive Fate Stay Night / go /
Cinematic
zero
universe or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, there's a massive, and all of it is all connected into its own specific multiverse.
Mhm.
So with Fate Stay Night, you have magicians that can summon servants that are basically heroes of future or past.
Mhm.
Like, let's say like Lancelot or Gilgamesh or
King Arthur.
All these like very like iconic heroes throughout history.
Alexander the Great, I think, is another one.
Yeah.
In one of those sets. Yeah.
Hercules.
Hercules,
is
yeah.
another one. Yeah. And basically they are all kind of in a competition to become the last mage and servant standing, to basically win the Holy Grail.
Mhm.
And then whenever they win the Holy Grail, they get to make a wish, essentially. And the way that most of the series go is, you have a couple like main characters that kind of show up throughout like each series, and they're all relatively the same people, but they're not.
Mhm.
And basically, the further you get on into all the different shows, it kind of becomes apparent that they're all kind of like everything's kind of interconnected to the point of like this one's definitely from a different parallel universe, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But you have to consume a lot of Fate Stay Night for this to happen. But if you just watch Unlimited Blade Works, which I think is still on Netflix,
It was at least like a year or two ago.
yeah, it's 26 episode series, really solid action anime that is relatively unobjective. It's just a good show.
Mhm.
Yeah, pretty high level of animation throughout the series.
It's UFO table. So if you're familiar with Demon Slayer, which is one of the other big shonen anime that's kind of in popular
Culture.
things, right? Yeah, that's pretty much the same company that did it. But yeah, like I don't want to go into too deep because it is a rabbit hole that will never end.
Yeah.
Like there are YouTube videos that kind of have to do a light explanation of how Fate Stay Night universe works, and it's like 2 hours long.
Yeah.
Yeah, the rabbit hole is really deep.
Yeah.
But Unlimited Blade Works is a good
It's a
point
good
to
entry
start.
point, and Fate Stay Night Go is like their mobile game or whatever,
Mhm.
or Fate Grand Order is another one. Then you have Fate Zero, which is also really good, and there's just so many.
Yeah, Zero is
Yeah.
pretty good.
Mhm.
That was my starting point with it.
Yeah.
Oh, was Zero?
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Unlimited Blade Works was my start.
I mean, I like Unlimited Blade Works the most, just because like you have all the classic characters, like you have King Arthur, Hercules,
Gilgamesh.
Like,
Yeah.
you get like all the really big names, where some of the other ones don't. There's like some other like second tier heroes.
Who
that
is
show up.
it? I just totally blanked. Lancer is.
Oh,
I had it in my head. It's an Irish or Celtic.
yeah. I will look.
Yeah,
it up
Andrew's
real
going to
quick.
get it here in a second. In the meantime, I will entertain by filling dead air and jumping into my slightly controversial choice. Controversial for reasons. We'll get into it. So it is not the film, but the book series, His Dark Material. So this is by Philip Pullman. In North America, you would know it as The Golden Compass, although apparently elsewhere in the world, it was released as Northern Lights, also The Subtle Knife and The Amber Spyglass. So this basically follows two children. So this is kind of YA, although it wasn't actually written with a real target audience, and it goes into a lot of philosophical and theological ideas. But it follows two children, one from a slightly different Earth where everyone is essentially born with a familiar. So this is a creature that exists outside of them and is essentially their soul, and it describes their personality. So over time, as you are a child, it is able to change from being a bird to a fish to a badger to whatever else. And over time, as you develop and become a person, it settles into one shape and stops changing. And that kind of is an indicator or a dictator of your personality in a way. So for her, this is the word, like touching someone's familiar would be very taboo because it's essentially like touching someone in the most private way possible. The world crosses over with what is actually our world as well, where we have one of the other characters come in who is just a normal, average, everyday boy off on an adventure. And yeah, kind of, religious-esque hijinks ensue, which is where a lot of the controversy came from. There are a lot of people who are Harry Potter was a little controversial in a way because it has magic. This was way more controversial with people than Harry Potter would ever probably be.
Well, so I remember, I think I remember reading one of the books when I was younger. Yeah. But then I remember just seeing it's like a polar bear.
Armored bear?
Armored bear? The armored bear, yeah.
Yeah.
It just looks like a polar bear to me.
It's a polar bear with armor.
Yeah. But I was correct.
Congratulations. You're both right.
Yes. I've totally blanked on that character's name. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely not for everyone, and you do have to kind of approach it with the idea of, it's very big about the church, and it doesn't specify a church. It's just the church, and it's from an alternate universe, and they're not great people, and they're doing kind of not great things, and you have to kind of separate that from, or maybe not separate that from commentary on current everyday.
Yeah.
So anyways, Andrew, what you got?
Okay, so his name, and I'm going to butcher this, Ku Chulain?
Oh, is it Kukulane? Maybe
Kukulane, maybe.
I'm not sure. I should know this, but I'm a terrible.
But yeah,
person.
He is a hero from the Ulster cycle of Irish mythology.
Yeah,
he is a demigod, the offspring of a mortal woman, Dictor, and the deity Lug.
Sure. Anyway, I just liked it because while watching the show, I'd gone back and looked up who these people would be, who they're supposed to be, because some of them are really obvious.
Yeah.
But I was like, I'm not sure who this is, and I'm like, oh, cool, it's like a Irish folklore. That's a neat ad. It's always interesting to me when we're changing gears here, but whenever you go to like these anime, and a lot of them will reach for, I wouldn't call it obscure, but at least mythology that I wouldn't know. And I can't use the excuse of, oh, well, it's just a Japanese mythology when they're like pulling, Western Europe, and I just don't know it. So
yeah, there's one of my favorite, I'll say, tropes, for lack of a better term, for a lot of anime is them pulling from historical characters that aren't Japanese mythology or Japanese history.
Right.
Because then you get introduced to some of this history in a different way than what you would normally consume it as. And, most of the time it's just for entertainment purposes or just salad dressing, for lack of a better term. But, every once in a while, you can see the producers of the show or whatever, throw in little hints of more of their past and everything that is kind of fun to kind of learn about, especially if you are familiar with it, say military based things like battleships and that kind of stuff.
Did you just pitch the Transforming Battleship Girls show on this?
They don't transform.
They just are. Okay,
they
whatever.
Just are.
I don't. Moving forward, back to the actual subject of this episode, because we're not covering whatever Andrew was just branching us into.
It's Kantai collection. Just
stop. Everything, everywhere, all at once. Joel, summarize.
Oh, good luck.
So, all right. So this is a multiverse film, as we have already alluded to.
Yes.
And we start out with our main character, Evelyn, who is a middle-aged Chinese immigrant woman living in the U.S. And she, along with her husband, run a laundromat. And they're being audited. And so there's all this pressure. Her father is visiting at the time, and she has a lot of pressure surrounding that. So she is just this very distracted, tense time in her life individual who ultimately doesn't feel like she has accomplished anything with her life.
Right.
And so all of this is going on, and you get a very clear sort of slice of life sort of beginning where you're just kind of getting introduced to the characters and the relationships and
She has a
the
daughter.
environment. Yeah, all of this is going on. And then, bam, out of left field, an alternate reality version of her husband takes over her husband's brain and starts feeding her instructions because there's an all-powerful something out in the multiverse that is hunting her down, trying to kill her, and she's the only one that can save the entirety of existence. And really weird hijinks ensue.
Alrighty. Well, so we have a multiverse and a little slice of life familial relationship.
It seems to be a going trend with what we've been reviewing lately.
Such a trend of, it's not even that we've been, it's not like we reached back and grabbed one of these from 10 years ago.
Exist.
These are 3 recent releases, just boom, bam, boom.
Yeah, talking specifically about Encanto, Turning Red, and this one.
Yes. So what did we think of our 3rd installment in...
Well, pretty highly. So we split out our scores into 2 separate buckets. We've got our technical review score, which is made up across our 4 pillars of review, those being spectacle, performance, score, and plot. And then we also have an entertainment score, and we keep that separate because something can be bad, but entertaining, right? So in this case, our technical score is an 8.9 out of 10. So really quite high.
Yeah.
And that's really impressive given the fact that this is a relatively low budget film.
Very, very low, but 25 million.
Yeah. And it was just the artistry that was put into this. You could really tell, particularly in
there's like a lot of passion.
Like the special effects, right? A lot of these special effects, when you look at them, they're not the kind of effects that you're used to seeing. They're really low cost options compared to like grand sweeping CGI or anything like that.
Or just a Marvel film.
Right. Yeah. But they're executed flawlessly. Right.
Flawlessly.
There's flaws all up in here. No, they are immaculately executed, even though they are cheap solutions.
Yes.
Right. And so it gives the film a very different sort of texture.
Yeah, and the visual effects in the film was all done by 5 total people. They did not have this massive, studio behind them to where they could, outsource all their things to India or whatever to just do
6 different production groups doing special effects, etc.
Yeah, and I'm not entirely sure if it also that number 5 counted the 2 directors. Either.
Right.
Because I know that they went through and like did help pull a lot of the footage and do a lot of the effects themselves just because it is very low budget.
So just for reference, this is the highest scoring on the technical side because we don't actually track entertainment, which is something we need to rectify when we can because they didn't exist back then.
Yep.
Of the 3 that we referenced earlier. So Encanto, Turning Red, and this is the highest scoring.
That definitely tracks.
Yeah.
Speaking of entertainment, the entertainment value that this one garnered from us was a 9.7 out of 10.
And now that is, as you alluded to already, separated from the technical. And it's just the average of the 3 of us. So
and looking,
one of us did not enjoy it as much as the other 2.
Right. So the way that the numbers break down is that we just have a single metric, 1 to 10, of how much did you enjoy this. And there are 3 of us. So that's out of 30 and then normalized back down to 10. So divided by 3.
Yeah.
So 9.7 multiplied by 3 split out into 3 scores is a 10, a 10, and a 9.
Yep.
So
one of us enjoyed it slightly less. 10% less.
But this was 1 point out of 30 away from being the maximum possible enjoyment. So we absolutely loved this film.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't think I've laughed that hard in a film in at least a decade. Like I definitely walked out of the theater wanting to just turn right back around and get back in line. One, because there's just so much to take in.
Right.
There is a lot in this film.
Yes.
A lot of really good things, a lot of really funny lines, and a lot of emotional payoff towards
so
the
like
end.
like we already alluded to the fact that this is kind of a story that on the the emotional drama side of it is similar to Encanto and Turning Red, where you have this multi-generational family conflict that over the course of the story gets worked on and resolved and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And this one, I would say, pulled that off, in my opinion, not quite as well as Encanto, but very, very close.
Okay.
From the familial drama perspective, I can see it. However, and I'm going to just say this, I want to preface this first by asking y'all a question. Have either of you seen any other film from A24, the studio behind this? You have?
Yeah.
What film? I'm curious. Prove it. Prove it.
Let me look up.
Okay. So I have seen one film from them, The Green Knight, which is, Arthurian legend style, very, very art house. So I had some idea of that this is probably going to have some of those elements. But as a general rule, a lot of their movies don't hit well with me. Midsommar is probably the most known name that they've produced. And that I have no interest. It's kind of a horror thing. They also had this, I think it's just called Lamb, but it's also kind of like a horror film about adopting a lamb.
And treating it like a human.
And how the animals react to it and stuff. And I was like, nope, don't want that either. So there are a lot of people out there who hold, because this is kind of a studio that's maybe just above indie in terms of production levels, but they're still very much so an art house indie film group. So there's a lot of people who hold them in very high regards. I'm not one of those people. And yeah, this blew me away. This is great. It definitely has moments that you're like, oh yeah, no, this is an indie film, all right. They're doing some weird stuff right here. And
like, to harp on the weird, right? Because this is a multiverse film, and it ascribes to the the infinity that you can achieve with multiverse ideas, right? You can keep moving further and further away from the reality that you are familiar with until you reach something that is completely unrecognizable. As if you want to find a thing, just keep going. If you have infinite time, eventually you'll find a reality where that was what happened, right? And so with that being the setting, there's no reason things can't be weird, and they embraced that in a big way.
Yeah, they leaned into it hard.
Yeah. I lied. I've seen indie films. I've not seen anything from A24.
Nailed it. I was pretty confident that I was probably the only person, and it was mostly just because Lauren, has her master's in English, and so she's very interested in seeing The Green Knight on film, and it was very art house. They altered some of the story. She was very upset, and for me, they didn't totally grasp the concept of what filming a dark room is like, and that you still need to be able to see objects within the room. So it didn't leave a great impression.
So one thing to say too that I thought was really cool. One of the directors, so it's done by a pair of directors, just Daniel's film. So there's Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert. Daniel Scheinert is actually a Birmingham, Alabama native. I was in the same middle school as him. I can't claim any fame that I know him and talk to him now, because the last time I talked to him was probably in 8th grade. But we did go to the same school, and it's just kind of cool that he was there. So it's always fun seeing, especially talent from Alabama, actually get their time in the limelight. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, you pitched this initially as, oh yeah, I went to school with the guy who's directing this indie film, and I was like, oh cool, who is A24? Like, I don't know if I can. Well, it has Michelle Yeoh. Okay, you reeled me back in a little.
Well, he did Swiss Army Man with Daniel Radcliffe.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is also pretty weird.
It's pretty weird.
They embrace the weird.
Well, and the Daniels, they did the Turn Down for What music video. If you probably haven't seen that, Joel. But it is a ridiculous, just imagine this film just kind of condensed way
as a music video.
Yeah. Well, there is the theory, right, that directors only create one film. It's just each film you see by them is kind of a further distillation of that film, like achieving that closer and closer.
But yeah, I mean, like it's the movie itself was absolutely fantastic.
It absolutely so caveat for everyone out there. It absolutely earned its R rating, so
Yes.
much so that they actually have to blur something out to preserve it as only an R rating. So viewer discretion, just go ahead and be warned. If you're not comfortable with, maybe some, I don't want to say, I don't know, how do I say it? I guess off-putting, maybe a little raunchier humor.
A little bit.
Yeah, there's they don't overindulge.
It's like maybe 10 minutes.
But they definitely when they have the opportunity, they lean into it.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So that is a caveat for anyone out there who might be, I don't know, they just
Not for kids.
No, absolutely not.
It is an R-rated film that earned its rating. This is not one of those, sure, it's R rating because they shoot guns at each other.
But it is noted that the R rating is not for any sort of gore or over the top violence. All of the violence is very stylized. It is got a lot of kung fu everywhere, so it's actually really pretty. It's really, really enjoyable to watch.
The cinematography and also the fight choreography are really good, especially for low budget indie. They basically chose the things they're going to emphasize, and ended up with kind of a smaller cast, and then found a way to really make use of that cast, and then showcase them over and over and over again. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and the thing that's really cool, so this is one of Michelle Yeoh's like one of her first full billing American films. Because most of the time, whenever she's in an American film, she's not always the main character.
Right.
She's like the aunt in Shang-Chi.
Yeah, and then she's the mother in Crazy Rich Asians. She's in Tomorrow Never Dies, she was, second to Pierce Brosnan. It's always been kind of an ongoing theme, and this is one of her first ones that she's had here in the U.S. that is actually her as the main character, and she does such a wonderful job just you get to see a full range.
Oh yeah,
because
and that's one of the big things in here is that we are explicitly dealing with a bunch of different versions of the same characters in different scenes, and so each of these actors has to portray completely distinct versions of themselves while at the same time at the core of it still being the same person
and looking. I mean, they look the same. At the end of the day, they don't like land you with a bunch of prosthetics or something because they couldn't afford it.
And every single time, the actors nail it 100%.
Yes.
Something also to note too. Normally, you don't go over actors and actresses' names, but I'm going to totally butcher this. Ke Huy Quan. He is the actor who played Short Round in Temple of Doom and Data in Goonies, and that is the last time that he has been in a film until this film. So almost near 40 years.
And in this film, he plays opposite the lead as her husband.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically second billing as a character.
And he's Wayman is just an absolutely hilarious addition to this film that if it was anyone else, I'll say even like Jackie Chan, for lack of a better thought, I don't
think Jackie Chan can hold that off.
I don't know. It was just such, because I'm sorry. No, Quan just has just such a funny.
He's so charming.
Yeah.
Yes.
So disarmingly charming.
Yes. Jackie Chan would have gone, for as weird as this film is, he would have gone over the top of it. Whereas I think Quan is a much more believable person throughout, especially as the various roles of Wayman, if you will. The performance throughout this was so good.
Yeah.
Which, again, we talked about this with Princess Bride. If you don't have a lot of budget for the set pieces, the actors better come through.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and they did with this.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we prepare to jump to the intermission, if you don't feel like you're prepared to tangle with spoilers, then it's time to run and do your taxes. SpoilersIntendedPodcast.com can't help you with an audit, but we do have great content for all your media review needs. But if you think your other selves will know enough to ward off the all-consuming emptiness of the bagel, then swap your shoes, bite down on that chapstick, and grab my hair. Alrighty, everyone, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed a quick intermission. If you didn't get the message, it is all spoilers all the time. Every universe that this podcast is produced in is spoilers from here on out. If you don't want that, you need to turn it off right now. But if you don't want to turn it off and you want to hear, well, let's get weird because we're going straight into spectacle.
Yep.
Andrew, you started this off.
Okay. So spectacle is the visual effects, the way the cinematography is done, how the movie feels when you're watching
Stuff
it.
that makes you say, wow.
Yeah. And this movie made me say, wow, a whole lot.
And not always. Sometimes you were the Owen Wilson.
Wow. Wow.
Wow.
Okay. So I gave Spectacle 10.
Okay.
I thought that this is so impressive for 5 people to do. And I don't know if that number is including the Daniels or not, but this is a very low budget, $25 million film. And probably a lot of that went to go paying the actors because we have Jamie Lee Curtis in here. We have Michelle Yeoh.
James Hong.
Yeah. I mean, just so many big names. And there's only a couple of them, but they're still big names.
Right.
So whenever you look at kind of what they achieved, especially with basically all practical effects in the long run, especially some of the sequences whenever she is being pulled through all the different multiverses to go find, the one that she needs that has like martial arts or whatever. And, she's being pulled backwards through this. And I watched a breakdown of how they did this. And it was literally just one of the Daniel Kwan just kind of walking through the streets of New York and just videotaping everything. And then they just sped up the footage. And then they just matched her just sitting on a chair, just kind of like waving her hands back and forth. And then they fixed the footage that way.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things where like, it's a fantastic looking shot. And, in my mind, I'm like, oh yeah, this, super, like they probably just had tons of found footage and everything. Like, no, he just went out and shot it for 2 hours and did this. Cause that is the type of budget that these guys are working with.
Yeah.
Not even included, like I'm going to let you guys go.
You're going to let us have something. Joel, you want to go next?
Sure. I'm going to say slightly less impressed. I gave it an 8 out of 10.
Okay. That's still respectable.
Still very respectable.
Yeah. And respectable.
Respectable.
Please don't.
And like, I'm going to say that for me, the weird kind of hurt it here a little bit, right? Because there was an awful lot of looking at the, oh, what did they do? As opposed to looking at the, oh man, look at what they did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in particular, the whole concept of the hot dog hands, once they started secreting ketchup and mustard, was just like, that's a practical effect that kind of took me out of the experience because it was so alien that it instead of analyzing the story, I'm analyzing why did they make this decision and what are the implications of this decision and how did they enact this decision and like all of that stuff while I'm watching, which is not necessarily the experience that I want to have.
Fair.
When I'm watching a story.
That is totally acceptable. But that is probably one of those where like when they were writing the story, one of them was like, it'd be funny if they just had hot dog hands.
Now, okay, so on the flip side, one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie is when the 2 main characters are just rocks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Everything about the rock.
And the dialogue in that scene is all just text on the screen.
Yeah.
And
no sound or anything.
No sound. Like there's
no music.
Yeah.
No music.
And because the entire thing about that is that these 2 characters can at will travel to any reality they want. They experience them all without filter all the time. And if they concentrate their essence into this reality where life on Earth never existed and they're just rocks, so that happens somehow, that they're still them, but they're rocks. And they, but if they concentrate their essence here for a brief moment, they can find peace. Right. And so that's reflected in the no noise, no sound of their voices for the dialogue, no music, just a little bit of gentle wind. And then we do have the dialogue is just in text. And so that one struck me as a really fantastic scene that is really difficult to adapt to film. It's the kind of thing that you would see in a book any day of the week. Right.
Yeah.
because it's very conceptual.
It's very cerebral.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I really loved that scene because it was a clever way to execute what is just something that is almost inherently incompatible with medium.
Yeah. Well, and like what they're talking about too is very existential.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And, you get the, later on in a couple scenes later, you get them where they have the googly eyes and he's trying to chase the rock down the,
and these are okay. So, and this is not the only inanimate objects that they become either. Like they're a pair of piñatas for a little while. And
just getting the
they're
beat out of them.
They're 2D crayon sketches for one scene.
Yep.
There's a lot of really and these things cost nothing to do, right? Like you just draw in crayon, you go out and you find some kid's birthday party and you have two piñatas right there.
I just filmed two rocks sitting on the edge of a cliff.
Yeah.
We'll type in some text in Photoshop later.
Yeah. So like all of that costs nothing to do, pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
And it commands a fair percentage of the screen time.
Yeah. And not in a bad way.
Yeah.
It commands your attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Stephen, what did you...
Okay, well, Andrew gave it a 10. Joel gave it an 8. Y'all have your reasons.
Wonder where we're going.
And that's fine, because I also gave it a 10.
Oh, yeah.
So, my favorite scenes are the rocks. Bar none. I don't care. This is such a indie art house thing to do where we have... the movie is action. There's stuff happening. There's these concepts of, essentially splitting kind of your consciousness across multiple universes. And the way that's executed is great. And then all of a sudden everything just stops because it's right at the point where
very climactic.
Right. Evelyn is kind of achieving, I don't want to call it the nirvana, but the point at which she's
the fullness of awareness.
Right. Experiencing everything all at once, like achieving the title, right? Everything everywhere all at once.
That's the name of the movie.
Yeah, go figure. Without really referencing it, which points for them. But she's at that point, and it's very overwhelming. It's very chaotic. And suddenly just whoop, dead silent, stillness, two rocks on the edge of a cliff, a little breeze, and just text. And not just from the storytelling perspective of what the characters need, but also the audience need, right? This sudden huge break from everything that's happening. And it's just take a deep breath, sit still for a moment, enjoy the view, read a little text, have a relax, and then we'll get back to the wacky weirdness where we're going to beat up a security guard with two dildos, because that is also a thing that happens. Which that was less of a problem for me than just the hot dog fingers they're hard to look at. Just being honest. Although props, right? We get the 2001 reference with just beating the devil out of the normal fingered monkey with the hot dog fingers.
That he's got the hot dog
fingers. So that was a cute little ref. They just they went out to Party City and got them some gorilla costumes. It was low budget. They're already there that day to film the rocks on the cliff. They were set. But yeah, besides that, the fight choreography really stood out. And also the fight cinematography, right? So as soon as we hit that first bit where Wayman has the fanny pack, and he whips it out, and the camera is suddenly your viewpoint is the fanny pack.
It's attached to it,
and he sweeps the leg with it, and you sweep the motion as the camera. I was like, oh, we're doing things in this movie, because it was. It's kind of just a slice of life there was a little weirdness thrown in, but at that point, you had the chapstick.
You still don't really know what you're in.
You don't really know what's going on.
The cinematography was already impressive just from the opening scene, right? Because you have you're focusing on a mirror, right? As the opening shot. And then you have like somebody slams a door or something and the mirror kind of chunk and because it's like a rotating mirror. And then it like loses its perch on where it was. And so it kind of falls to where gravity would take it in its rotating axis. And then that reveals two different things about the scene. And then you rotate and you're looking straight on at Michelle Yeoh's character, and Wayman comes in and there's another mirror behind her that perfectly frames his face. So you can see both characters' faces at the same time. So like, it's just very well blocked and shot just from the get-go.
So small sadness. I didn't actually get to see that part.
Oh my gosh.
Because our theater that it was not the proper resolution. This movie was not scaled to the size of the screen, and it was literally me, Lauren, and one other person. So I was like, well, if anyone's going to fix this,
it's going to be me. Yeah.
So I was actually out telling them, hey, yo, you've got this set to like, I don't know, 2-3, and it needs to be 3-4 or something. It's just not meeting the edges.
So in my theater, they didn't turn off the lights until like 10 minutes into the film.
It's an indie film. No respect.
I know, right? Like, and it's definitely one of those where, like, you know, you sit there and you're just like, all right, are they going to turn them off? Do I need to wait? And then you wait like another 2 minutes, and you're like, I don't know about this.
Well, now I'm kind of committed, and I'm just in this experience. Yeah, talking about mirrors, but kind of the shatter effect that they do with Evelyn when she's first experiencing crossing into a new universe. I think that was really great, and I don't think it was very expensive. You know, I think again it was
that's practical. I'm pretty sure.
Pretty much practical, or a very simple superimposition where they took two scenes, merged them on a center line, and then just put a shattered mirror over it, basically.
So one of my favorite, and these are more just editing techniques, but the initial scene whenever we see Joy basically being tuned into by the Jabu Tupaki.
Oh, right. Where she just shifts her head.
Yeah, she shifts her head and it's like a radio dial.
Yeah. Chick, chick, chick. And it's just the background
click,
shifts to the different. Oh, it was so good. I was really sad that they moved away from that and only used it the one time.
Yeah, because like the second they did it, I was like, oh, I like this.
Yeah.
We got bad things about to happen here.
Yeah. That was really cool. And then I really, the fight with Deirdre, whenever Evelyn's still kind of like getting used to verse jumping, and she gets kind of thrown into basically her and Wayman's discussion in the RV about them getting divorced. And then she keeps getting pulled back into the fight with Deirdre, like down the stairs and everything. And then she finally figures out how to do it. And then she's defending herself off with her feet.
Yeah.
Just like that entire sequence is just so much fun. One, because you get a lot of really interesting angles and everything, but then two, you just keeps layering on and on and on of just some of the comedy that's just going to keep going. Yeah.
Well, and also from a story perspective, the quick breaks into kind of the other universes where it's not that action is happening, but Evelyn and Wayman are having discussions about their lives and, you know, kind of the differences from universe to universe because Evelyn is, you know, being transported through this. So her consciousness is there and she's realizing how different her life could be. And is that better or not? And these kinds of things. It's just so well done and it hits really well as a result.
Yeah.
So speaking of hitting very well, let's talk some performance.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm going to take this one first.
Sure.
I gave it a 10.
Okay.
Bold.
I think
not that bold.
I think it was bold. So, Jamie Lee Curtis as Deirdre.
Deirdre. I didn't realize it was her until Holly told me after we left the film.
It took me a hot minute to be like, I know who this is. And she's wearing, you know, she's actually kind of in some prosthetics. Like a fat suit-esque. Yeah. But yeah, like the shifts that they do with all of them, but especially knowing that, you know, she probably commanded a decent budget. And so they kind of had to make use of her in a sense.
Yeah.
And the fact that she was, you know, either willing or capable of meeting this.
Well, Jamie Lee Curtis is pretty weird. She loves those kind of films.
The weird things.
Yeah.
I think another name, just because this one, and it may just be I just don't see enough cinema. I don't see enough movies. So Stephanie Sue.
Yeah.
So that's Joy. The only thing that I have seen her in is Shang-Chi. And she is the friend that they have dinner with at the start and the end of the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's like, so you're telling me 2 weeks ago you were parking cars and now you're saving the universe? And that's the only thing I've seen her in mainstream. And then she's in this and she's great.
Yeah.
I don't want to take everything from y'all, but I could sit here and gush about most names here. So I want to pass it off. I was really hoping to get that to finalized portion. I tell you that if we didn't cut that out of a video, you could put a counter on screen. Ding, ding.
I mean, I was counting.
I know.
Every time he does it.
You want to pick that up with, I'm going to pass it off?
Yeah, that's fine.
But I'm going to pass it off to Joel.
All right. Well,
Wow, rude. He was looking at me.
I know.
I pointed at you
It's
and
the
then I
fake
looked
out.
away.
It's the fake out.
Watch for the fake out.
I was also bold and I gave this a 10 for performance because
shocked.
this was amazing. Like we already touched on the fact that every actor has to portray multiple versions of the same character that have to be distinct in specific ways, but at the same time be recognizable as the same person.
Right.
You know, in some core attribute. And it was not only believable, but it came across recognizably every time. Like every scene, there was zero ambiguity as to what version of which character each actor was portraying.
Well, and if you weren't positive, they even did a really good job, like with Wayman doing kind of the head snap.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, oh, he just like changed channels, essentially.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's it. Like, I mean, I have nothing bad to say about the performance in this film at all.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, this is going to be awkward because I gave it a 9.
Oh, what is wrong with you?
Okay, so
That is still very high and yet also too low.
it's still very high, but I'm sorry. Okay, I had it as a 10 initially, and then as I was writing the review, I was like, I don't think Stephanie Sue's performance was at a 10.
Okay.
I thought that she could have been. I thought she could have been more intimidating.
Oh, but she like your initial introduction to her as Jobu was terrifying.
So the initial scene with her as Jobu was scary
like
and
pure
awesome.
horror, right?
Towards the end of the film, it didn't really do much for me. There was a couple times where like towards the end, I was like, oh, she's back on. Okay, like not like I don't know, not. Well, again, like she still did a fantastic job.
Right.
I still gave it a 9. Like this is more of just it's a super nitpick.
I mean, that's fair. I think ultimately it was she moved from being as they went from
as being an antagonist to being more of a
well, it shifted from the focus being on
world destroying, multi-universal
existential threat to being we're really just having a fantastical surrounding trappings for our family drama.
Yeah, and and maybe just whenever it scaled back a little bit, it just felt not as hard hitting as whenever like Michelle Yeoh was
the way that she's initially presented before you really realize that it's Joy.
Yeah,
is like you can't keep that up and make her a sympathetic character.
Exactly.
Like she has to be, if she's the horror villain that you sort of like you anticipate she's going to be and sort of seems like she is in the first couple of scenes that she appears, then there's no redeeming that, right? There's no having a heart to heart with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I kind of hinted at it at the in our spoiler-free section, but really, I mean, Quan as Wayman he was absolutely incredible.
Like as much as this is a triumph for Michelle Yeoh, this movie belongs to Quan because
I know
he was the heart and soul of the piece. Like both like the character was, but then his portrayal of that character was so convincing.
Well, because you need to have so you always need to have someone that can deliver exposition.
Yeah,
and especially with these kind of big sci-fi kind of set pieces,
you just don't know what's going on.
Yeah, where you just don't know what's going on, and someone needs to explain it to Michelle, or Evelyn, I guess in this case, and he does such a good job of being the charmer whenever he's alpha Wayland or Wayman, sorry. But then whenever he switches right back to the meek, kind of quiet one in the beta verse, I get, for lack of a better explanation, he just switches so well. And probably, just my favorite scene is whenever, he's eating the chapstick or whatever and just dead stare into and the guy's, he fights him for a little bit and then he stops and then he just grabs all the gravel out of the fish tank and puts it in the...
And the whole time you're going, oh no,
This is so much worse.
He just dialed this up to 11.
And, as he's doing that, he's just death staring them.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yep, this is exactly what I signed up for.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, it's not the confident Quan that really sells it. It's the meek and, be kind and do goofy things.
Yeah.
Put googly eyes on random stuff.
And the way that it's just a second and a half clip, right? But it's already been established that he likes to treat inanimate objects as if they have feelings, because that's just a way in which he expresses his optimism.
Right.
And kind of pushes his optimism outward. And so one of the things that he does is he puts laundry in different rooms, even though it's inefficient, because he says they feel better there. Right.
He's worried that it's getting they're getting too crowded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he puts little googly eyes on things because it's cute and it's adorable, and it just drives his wife up the wall. And there's this second and a half clip where she looks over at him in the middle of jumping between a bunch of realities, and he's just finishing putting two googly eyes on this red Chinese lantern. And he looks over at her, realizes she sees what he's doing, and he just kind of goes, ooh, and scampers
And runs away, hides it from her. Yeah.
And it's little touches like that that really bring the character to life and make it so charming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because whenever they're switching in between verses, you get so much more character development than what you would get if it was just one singular,
just kind of a linear story.
Yeah. Just because you can see someone, quotation marks, out of character, but still within the realm of whatever their character's possibility is.
Yeah. Well, you get these little vignettes of who this person can be in all these different scenarios, because ultimately when you core it back down to the original character, they're still capable of being that person.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the kind of overarching feel of the story. And the reason why this Evelyn is the best is because she's so bad at everything. It means every other universe must have a good possibility for her to jump to.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious and also not relevant to performance because that belongs in plot. Anyways. But yeah, I just want to, just because he dinged on Stephanie Sue, and I didn't appreciate it. Just want to throw down. But I think the shit and the ability to handle, one being the absolute horror that she is on her introduction, and then slide all the way down, because ultimately she wants to be accepted.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
She's trying to find her place with her mother, and this is the whole point of her reign of terror. Is basically she is trying to find the one version of her mother that can connect
Accept
to her
yeah.
by becoming who she is, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So the slide down the scale there, while maybe for the story it doesn't always hit right, I think the actual ability to do it throughout and kind of flip the performance is pretty noteworthy.
Okay. I'm sorry.
You gave it a 9. I expected that to come from over here, not you. Like,
wow.
What in the world?
I'm sorry.
On that note, it's on to the score, and I think Andrew?
Okay, sure. So the score of the score, this is the music and how it was edited, the sound design, and other things of the like. I give it a 9. The music is honestly pretty fantastic. Going through and listening to the entire soundtrack, just in its own realm today without the context of the film was really weird. But there's a couple tracks in there, especially towards the end, that if I heard it just out of context without the film there, I would know it was from this film. It's one of, like, during the climactic scene, there's I can't remember the track name, but kind of like whenever Evelyn is figuring everything out and she's standing in front of a bench, essentially like the goon squad that she's trying to get to her daughter. And there's just like this really like interesting choral kind of bits here and there, like every couple seconds, that just like it really hits really hard. And I would definitely recognize it basically anywhere, but it's kind of on the level of Dune where I'm like, I don't know if I would listen to it outside of the movie because it's still just kind of weird, but not in a bad way.
Yeah. Joel?
Well, I gave the score an 8.
Okay.
I thought that the what you're referring to about it being really weird. I mean, it's definitely, the compositions are very quirky.
Yeah.
Right. And they don't come at you in a straight line, so to speak. Like they're not the predominant emotion in this scene needs to be adventure, right? So it's not going to give you that. It's going to wind its way through whimsy and weirdness, and then you find out that the whole time it was giving you adventure, right? Like, so it's really well done, and also supports the theme of the piece, which is just, it's weird. Just but ultimately I didn't come away from it with it making a lasting impression. So for me, that kind of caps it out at 8.
Sure. Yeah, okay. That's fine. Steven?
I gave it a 9.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this was kind of an indie art house decision in a lot of places, because the music is actually very slow for a lot of the scenes. When you go back and listen to, this is the fight with Deirdre music. It's, a fight. Cool. It's pretty slow music. It's very thoughtful.
Well, it's thoughtful and kind of prodding, but it is deliberate.
It's a very deliberate music, yeah. And I think that that's an interesting choice and kind of a bold and somewhat risky choice. It works. It is the ultimate. It works here. It's going to show up in a little bit on other issues. In terms of things that you take away from it, I think the song "This Is a Life," I think that one stuck with me. I went back and listened to it earlier today. I was like, yeah, this is still what I thought it was. Also, the kind of the usage of Claire de Lune, which is kind of just a classic, also free piano. You got to find money saving somewhere. So not a licensed song anymore. But the use of it in the movie was really well done, just because it's just kind of a classical piece, and they just kind of drop it on you in a weird way, because that's kind of the whole emphasis of the movie. Yeah. So that's, I agree with you though. I think for most of the score, listening to it outside of the movie is a little weird.
It was weird because I listened to the whole thing today, just front to back. And like, there were just some tracks I'm like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing right now, I guess.
Yeah, no, and it had a nice little blending in there of some Chinese style music and themes as well.
Yeah, there the one with the where they're talking about the bagel. That one's really
pretty weird. Yeah, well, they're talking about the bagel. It's a pretty weird scene, so it fits. I think that's kind of the theme here. Yeah, it was weird, but that's what the movie called for. So
yep.
So on that note, plot.
Yeah.
Joel,
you gonna start with me?
Yeah, I'm gonna start with you.
We're gonna start low,
probably.
I was harsh.
Okay,
and I gave it a 6.
Oh gosh!
Wow.
So when you enter into, hey, this is sci-fi in contemporary world, or this is magic in contemporary world,
right?
You've got to lay down some ground rules, which they did, and then you've got to stick with them, which they did not.
Interesting.
There are
please explain.
There are a number of significant issues. The first of which being that it is established that being able to the only thing verse jumping does for normal people is you can connect to the brain of another person in another universe.
Right.
Sure.
But they very explicitly carry things across 2 times. Physical objects across. The first one is, where in the world did the pair of headsets come for Michelle's character to wear the first time?
I mean, I'm pretty sure that
Wayman produces them from the fanny pack, and that's really all I've got.
Right. That is native to this universe, not where the technology was developed or manufactured or created.
Well, now
it could be
caveat argument. We see, and Joy as Jobu demonstrates very emphatically that the more connected you are, the less it matters. I mean, she basically converts her outfits and the weapons she is fighting with free will.
Right. So that's for them too, not the people that are doing it technologically.
It could just be while Joy is at the point where she's just doing this at will. Yeah, just whenever, whatever, wherever, whenever. For them, jumping they can tweak some small things, but they're not to that point, right?
Well,
it's the same idea.
Regardless, that is not the way that it is.
It's not explicitly explained. No.
Well, okay, but see, it also could just be the fact that there could be headsets that exist.
Who created them?
No. It's not. It's headsets that exist.
Bluetooth
It's just
headset.
a Bluetooth headset that the technology
well, it's not
can
though,
utilize.
because he has also a. Let's just be generous and say that it's just the iPhone that he's got.
It's a phone app,
and he's got a phone app on there. Who coded that phone app in this universe to interface with the Bluetooth headsets, which we're very generously saying are just standard Bluetooth headsets and don't have specialized hardware to scan brain signals.
Look, okay, they had to buy them in bulk. That's why everyone had the same headset. Got to make savings somewhere.
So point is,
fair enough.
It's broken from the outset. It happens again in the climax with the father, because he, without any tools, like let's say he's an absolute technological genius, and he, in the span of seconds, modifies his wheelchair to become an exoskeletal power arm, right? He had no tools to do that. So the only reliable, reasonable explanation is that he reached into his home universe and got some toys, but he's doing this through technology, and we have been informed that that's not possible unless you did the breaking your mind thing.
Now that version of wheelchair bound, good Lord, I can't use words, wheelchair bound grandpa, that wheelchair is the one that has like the coffee maker and other technology attached to it. So it's conceivable that it's just part of the wheelchair. Like that universe wheelchair was already technologically upscaled because that's the one that sprints by at full speed earlier. Right. So for all we know, that was just like, I don't think that was a reach across to do. I think that was just a feature of
But then that doesn't make any sense, because that universe was specifically the one where she punches Deirdre in the face. That's that universe.
I don't know. At that point, I don't know.
But no, it's definitely that universe. That's the one where her afternoon went all wrong, right? And then that one is most closely parallel with the one where they just went home after the meeting.
Gotcha.
Right? And the one where they went home is kind of the one where the story keeps happening, where you have the conflict happening in the one where the afternoon was terrible.
You have the fight versus the drama.
Yeah. Okay. And so like, even though that's alpha grandpa beaming into that grandpa's head, there's no reason that he should have a technologically upscaled scooter, right? Like none of that makes any sense whatsoever, given the rules that they've laid out.
Hey, Steven.
Yeah.
I don't like Joel anymore. What else you got?
You want more?
No, sure, go ahead.
Okay.
Knock yourself out.
Oh, okay. So let's talk about one of the reasons that this is an R-rated film. And that is the butt plug scene. Right?
Sure.
Yeah.
So the idea is that you do something that you would never normally do, like really, really weird, in order to just like bulge the probabilities in your universe in one direction, and then when it tries to recontract, it slingshots you off in another direction, and you end up connected to someone in the destination.
The one you desired.
Right. And so that's really cool. I enjoy the idea. It's really nifty. And it allows you to just do really funny stuff. And it makes sense according to the rules that you've laid out. And so, and I also really enjoy the part where she's not getting guidance. The only thing she knows at this point is do weird stuff, get powers.
Yeah.
Right. And so she's just doing the weirdest stuff she can think of. And Wayman even says, hey, don't do that. You have no idea where you'll end up. And that makes a lot of sense. And she just starts getting weird stuff and ends up with the noodle fingers and can't do anything. And, just all that kind of stuff. Really fun. Really enjoyed that sequence. It actually makes a lot of sense and is very tightly written. The problem comes in with the disconnection and the means of disconnection, because you've got a lot of everything with Wayman is he does the thing, the trigger that initiates his launch. He gets the connection and he maintains that connection until his concentration is broken, basically. But the trigger is no longer relevant. right?
Right.
The trigger
Correct,
is how
yeah.
he got there.
I know where that's going.
And so
Yeah, I know where it's
with the
going.
butt plug scene, the way that she disables her attackers is she pulls the butt plugs out and
She pulls the plug.
and then all of a sudden they no longer have their powers,
Okay.
right?
Well,
But
no, stop. I'm
Okay,
gonna stop
all
you
right,
right
you're
there.
going to say that, yes, that would break your
Yes,
concentration.
I was just about to ask you. If you have ever had, you just stated that when Wayman's concentration is broken, I don't know about you, Joel, but if you just rip something out of my butt, my concentration would be broken pretty severely.
That's not the implication of the scene, though. The implication
just
of the
said that
scene
that's how it works.
is
It breaks concentration.
while this object is in this location, they have these powers, right? Like,
I think that I can safely say their concentrations were both broken, and therefore they can't connect
I
anymore.
feel like their concentrations would be much more easily broken. Like you could find a way.
It would be easily broken, but it wouldn't be as cinematography.
Right, but the implication of the scene is they're gaining power from these objects, whereas it was just the initial action. And so their importance in the plot of the fight scene is overstated.
I love how that whole segment is just going to have Andrew laughing in the background.
I may have to cut my track from that. That was brutal. Oh my gosh.
I knew that was going to come up, and I was ready for that one.
But like, to flip this and say something really positive about the plot, I really like how this is going to contract has really minor spoilers for Turning Red. But in contrast to Turning Red, the resolution for the family drama side of this was very much couched in terms of mutual respect
and understanding.
And understanding, yeah, because like she starts off with well, I'm just gonna give you whatever you want, and then she's like, wait, no, I bought you a phone. You're gonna call me because I love you and I want to make sure you're okay, right? Like. And there's a give and there's a take, and there's both of them recognizing and accepting each other. And there's that element in Encanto, and Turning Red had less of that. It was more just well, the adult has now learned and they're going to do everything the kid's way. And
the difference between
after a kaiju fight,
a G Disney film and
no, I'm saying Encanto did it did it this way as well, but anyway, I really appreciate when it's couched in those terms, because that's healthy terms, right? Yeah. Whereas it's not a one-sided resolution.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Joel gave us something positive. I'm gonna pick it up and I'm gonna go.
Knock yourself out.
I gave plot a 9.
Yep.
Let's go. Fight me.
All right. I said my things.
We're gonna start this with, first off, you have to maintain concentration to have the powers. And when someone removes a butt plug from you, your concentration is broken. All right. Okay. That is universally consistent. Period. So my biggest nitpick on the plot is the movie can actually feel a little slow. Mm-hmm. And I think the music contributes to this in a large way, and it's not necessarily a good way, because the music is so deliberate. It's only a 2-hour, 19-minute film. And there's definitely a point midway through it where I was like,
yeah, I'd say
we are not in the third act yet. I was like, wow.
Yeah, like 65% around like the timeline on the film is when it starts to drag just a tad.
Just a bit,
Well, we got to basically the end of the film, and then it flashes up on the screen, part 3, all at once. And I'm like, oh no, I thought the movie was over. How long is this?
Yeah, no, yeah. So this
is a 4-hour marathon.
Yeah. So that's a bit of a knock on. It's somewhere within there with the pacing, where there's so this is both a positive and a negative for the plot, right? I love the fact that all the little things that come up, the googly eyes, the auditor awards, the big nose lady, all these little factors that show up over time, they all pay off, right? Mm-hmm. You know, big nose lady comes up to have dog foo and sling her dog around.
So weird.
Right?
So funny.
It was both, and also a little hard to watch because it's just a dog and she's just slinging it everywhere.
Well, it was a stuffed animal. But
I know, but you know what I mean.
Right, but at the same time, she's like, you're such a horrible person for shutting my dog in the refrigerator that I was beating to death on you.
I was wailing on you.
My favorite part, though, is whenever you have those kind of scenes, you have the actual dog like this just on the ground, just like staring at the cameras, like, oh yeah, this is so much fun. And then the next cut is clearly she's just like slinging around a stuffed animal.
Yeah. But like the payoffs on these things, the bagel, right? So you start with Deirdre. I'm not gonna get her name right. I give up.
You're really
Jamie
bad
Lee
with names.
Curtis. You start with Jamie Lee Curtis taking the Sharpie and circling the thing on the receipt, which is the bagel.
Yep.
And that circle shows up on their foreheads. It shows up as Joy's hairdo. It shows up as the bagel.
Yep.
Those things, the googly eyes, all those little things that build up over time that they use to pay off. One big credit because they made them all matter. You know, like you mentioned earlier, the little scene where he's putting the googly eyes on the paper lamp and she sees him and he runs away, right? Or the googly eyes on the rock, which was a massive payoff for me. I was dying laughing because the whole point of these rock scenes was that they were calm, tranquil, peaceful. And then as soon as Evelyn decides, you know what? No, you're my daughter and I'm going to fight to keep you in my life. And then it says, boom, googly eyes are on, let's go.
Yeah.
So I think
because that was also a symbol of her acceptance of her own husband.
Right. Like the bit where she puts it on her forehead.
And not like the glamorous otherworld version of him, but him himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is essentially the worst versions of both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they made so many things work, barring, Joel's apparently worthy of 4 points that they weren't as perfectly internally consistent, even though one of his points has already been debunked, thoroughly debunked. And we can make this a video cast so we can test the theory about your concentration.
Yeah, but we're trying to keep the rating below.
We can blur. We have tasteful blurring. But yeah, they made so many things pay off, and all throughout a framework of we're going to bring in Marvel, right? Marvel has a multiverse. It's time for a huge CGI fight. Turning Red has a family conflict. It's time for a kaiju fight. This movie has a multiverse with people who have tremendous powers, and they're just demonstrated as being capable of snatching incredible powers and making use of them. And the ultimate conflict is not a fight. And a lot of the point is about the idea of not fighting and of acceptance and, expressing love and how you express love to the various people and how you make them happy and how that affects you, right? And that's such a phenomenal play where, to their credit, $25 million, they didn't have the budget to put Evelyn and Joy in the sky to punch each other. Yeah. And you know what? That's good because
I'm so happy.
That's not what the movie needed, and that pays off really well. So Andrew, score?
So I gave it a 9.
Good man.
You took basically all of my points.
Wrecked.
So I'm just going to touch on some of just the mechanics that I just love in general kind of thing. I love the idea of like the butterfly effect where small thing turns into a big thing later on. And the
hot dog fingers just beating the crap out of that other monkey.
I didn't even bring up the hot dog fingers for plot. I could have.
They're very good with their feet. That was another thing that paid off.
That's not the thing. The thing is the branching timeline went so far back that there's no way that these, which they're not human, we'll call them proto-human, would be like the same people at the same time.
Oh, I know.
Like,
but that's not the point, Joel.
But it's another payoff of initially when she confronts Jamie Lee Curtis, the hot dog finger world is useless to her.
Yeah.
And then at the end, it pays off for her because she actually learns something from it.
Yeah. Well, and I love kind of like what Joel said, I love the mechanics of how the multiverse shifting actually play out and work.
Because like that first scene where Alpha Grandpa is like, all right, everyone, find your jump points. They immediately scatter across the room, just doing the weirdest stuff
whatever
you can
imagine.
I think probably my favorite verse switch was the super pinkies.
Oh yeah.
That like it's one of those things where like the idea that there's just this one universe where Evelyn only worked out her pinkies for years and years and years under like the martial arts master. I died in the theater. Like I was laughing so much. Like oh my gosh. Like I really haven't cried laughing in a theater in a very, very long time, probably since I was a kid.
Although there were some that were awkward. And I'm not even talking butt plugs here because I can't.
I mean, just imagine chewing some chapstick.
Now that I can kind of do that waxy now. The bit where she's like 4 paper cuts between each finger. One, that's so hard to watch because he's under so much pressure trying to do it. And he's just like, it doesn't work. You can't give yourself a paper cut when you mean to. It has to be on accident. But he's just so concentrated on just ripping that piece of paper through his. Oh, that was hard to watch.
Yeah. Like, well, and that's what it's meant to do, though. It's meant to be that just, stop.
But I'm happy
it's supposed to exemplify the fact that the initiation of these jumps are costly in an unexpected way.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm happy they moved away from those because even, again, the butt plug thing was actually just pure humor of trying to prevent him from getting it. And their fight moves away and the other dude comes over the top, full commit, just amazing.
Well, because it's definitely one of those things where there is definitely a cost, and they even kind of talk about it as like, oh, well, you're lucky that you only have to say I love you to Deirdre instead of break your arm.
Yeah,
because then that is a completely lasting effect that's just going to exist for her.
But also that one's hard to do because you have to mean it.
Yeah,
right, and she cannot commit to it until the point of no return, basically. Yeah.
Well, then you see in the hot dog universe that they did find love at some point.
So that was the one she was edging towards in order to slingshot the other direction. But the hot dog universe is so far away.
It was all the way off the map.
But I really do love the idea that there is a universe of possibilities for literally anything. Just in the idea of like, if you trained under this martial artist for 30 years, you have really strong pinkies that are super strong.
Yeah. Well, also I liked it too, where they have like this whole, this is the universe where Evelyn didn't run away with Wayman and she becomes the movie star, and it's just Michelle Yeoh playing herself.
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
Well, I loved those scenes too because you really get to see even more kind of vignettes of just general, like how her home life was with her father and everything, and you really just get so much more emotional weight, even just out of 3 seconds of a jump cut.
Yeah, yeah, and also the interaction between her and that universe's Wayman. Where she, kind of breaks and kind of gives away what their life would have been like because she's Evelyn from a different universe.
Yeah.
And he kind of considers it and then comes back to her with that line of, even if it meant that all we'd be doing is taxes and laundry together, I still think I would have liked to have experienced that life. And it's just like,
just ripped my heart
out, man. Hit so hard. Yeah. So on that note, speaking of hitting hard, you done? You got anything else?
Yeah, no, you pretty much took all my major points.
That's how I live to do. Joel, you want to try and bash something and get proven wrong?
No, I'm
that's what I thought. All right.
He got schooled so hard.
All right, we're moving out of objective truths about butt plugs and into subjective truths about your level of entertainment. Andrew, you want to go first?
Yeah, I gave it a 10.
Yeah, shocker.
Yeah, go figure.
Give me some.
I can't gush enough about how much fun and much of a payoff this film has. Where, at this point in the review, you've probably already seen the movie. You probably have liked it as most everyone else that has seen it has.
It's got a pretty high rating on Rotten Tomatoes and those.
Yeah, and this is definitely one of those films where, one, I want to go see it again, and two, whenever I saw the trailer for it, I was so excited because it was Michelle Yeoh. And then seeing that it looked like a relatively grounded sci-fi was also really exciting. And then, 3, you have, hey, I actually knew the guy that directed this. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And so it was just kind of like kept sandwiching and layering on top of it. And I was like, this is just fantastic. And when I finally got to go see it, it was exactly what I expected, but more on top of it. Because I was like, oh, I'll go and enjoy it just because it's Michelle Yeoh and it's a martial arts film. That'll be fun. And I got so much more out of it than what I was expecting. So, definitely a 10 for me. Like I want to go see it again. I'm probably going to go see it again soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Joel?
Well, I was the odd man out and I gave it only a 9.
Terrible.
How dare you?
Worst.
2 words. Hot dog fingers.
That's 3 words.
Hot dog is 1 word. Jinx, you owe me a Coke.
Anyway,
so like this, it was, I'll sum it up this way. When my wife and I walked out of the theater, she turns to me and she says, "That was the weirdest movie I have ever seen in my entire life." And I loved it.
Yeah. I knew Della would be a huge fan of
yeah.
that movie. Yeah. That's very much so is in line with her humor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Steven?
So you're done on that one? That's it?
It was the weirdest movie I've ever seen and I loved it.
All right. Well,
other than the hot dog fingers, I could do without that.
I gave it a 10.
Mm-hmm.
Shocker. I know we already knew how this average is going to work out. And I gotta come down. I gotta drop it from the top rope here because I've been slacking on my quota and we got to make a Star Wars reference. Rian Johnson, you want to subvert expectations? Take some notes, buddy. We got a chosen one, and you know why she's the chosen one? Because she's so bad at everything. It means she has all the possibilities she could tap into when she needs to.
Yep.
It's the only reason why she's good is because she's been so crappy throughout life.
Which I think is just such a fascinatingly good choice to basically make her the worst version of herself that she could possibly be, because that means that she is now actually the best version because she has all the possibilities.
Well, she's the blankest template.
Yeah.
Yeah, just such a good combination of plots of the universe-ending threat. We're going to jump universes, and here's our techno-babble excuse. I'm wearing a headband with colored blinking lights on it, riding in a van through middle of nowhere desert because reasons, into the tight, small family drama of, well, how do you solve all the problems in the universe? Well, you fix the problems with the people who are closest to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that ultimately that's the solution. That hits so well, just shockingly well, because I didn't totally know what to expect.
Yeah,
and I shame on you, Andrew. Shame. Where were the Rakunatui references? Am I the only one that made a reference to it? Shame.
I mean, I've made Rakunatui references for the last couple episodes that we've recorded.
Yes.
And you guys, it just went right over your heads because you didn't know.
Didn't know.
And now you know. Rakunatui was hilarious.
I love just how incredibly low budget the puppet was.
Yes.
Just emphatically, we didn't try.
But they sold out for it.
Oh, yeah.
Nonetheless.
Well, I love just, because she's in her hibachi universe and he just looks back and this guy has like a really tall hat. And I'm like, oh, I know exactly where this is going.
And, well, you can see the tail sticking out from under it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or like the sign twirling universe where that's what she became. She just gets the riot shield and uses that to fight with.
The chair.
It's a lot of absurdist humor. Mm-hmm. And you got to be prepared for a little bit of gross out raunchiness here and there. I mean,
well, the only gross out part is just the hot dog fingers. Like even like
the dildo Billy sticks.
Joy beats the living daylights out of a security guard with 2 dildos.
I don't know. I thought that was pretty funny.
Okay, so it's all funny. It's all funny. It's just a very particular flavor of humor, if you will.
There are definitely some people that's just going to totally miss.
Okay,
I'm not one of them. I'm still enough of a child that I was like, she beat him up with dildos.
Yeah.
But that's
totally fair.
A thing for someone. It's not for me because, I gave it a 10.
As we look at Joel.
I mean, I said hot dog fingers and I feel like that's all I got to say.
No, the hot dog fingers were fine. The ketchup and the mustard was where it got. But I think on that note, we're going to end it on hot dog fingers with ketchup and mustard.
That sums up the movie.
That is all the time we have for this episode. So until next time, I'm Steven.
I'm Andrew.
And I'm Joel.
And as always, every spoiler was intended. Thank you for tuning in. If you like what you heard, you can support the show for as low as $1 at patreon.com/spoilersintendedpodcast. We also have a Discord server and would love to have more people joining in the conversation. Links are in the description below. Thank you.